Welcome. Today we'll be going over something very near and dear to my heart: defense. More importantly, urban defense. Before we get into the interview today, I'd like to lend some insight. That insight comes from Psalms 144. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. When you look into the definition, the Hebrew translations of some of those words, trains sticks out. Trains means to be learned, taught, or studied. Hands signifies a right to possess, or strength and power. Putting all of those things in context, it would seem like it's a right that we have to protect those that we love, to die for, or study violence in order to protect those that we love. With the proper motivation, bringing all of those things into alignment, I pray and I hope that you would take these skills and these practices. You would become a student of violence. And later you'd be able to take those skills and those learned lessons back into your community in order to protect those that you love. So as we go on, this is a special treat for me. I hope it's a special treat for the bulk of my listeners. My friend, he's a Marine. He was a first sergeant. He's a combat veteran. And he's still a local hero here in our battleground, Golden State. He's a very dangerous man, very kind man, a man that is loved deeply. As I said before, he's a friend. He's my brother in Christ. He's a father. I'd like to welcome to all of you, my audience, Robert Garmong.
First and foremost, I'm a Christian. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a conservative. I'm a widower of an amazing, incredibly talented and intelligent wife who's now with our Father in heaven. I have 3 incredible sons, the Wolf Pack. I'm currently a detective for a big city law enforcement agency. I've been doing that investigative work for about 3.5 years now. And prior to that, for about 12.5 years, I did patrol, light uniform patrol, and a couple other specialized assignments. I worked with the DEA a couple of years. I worked with the gang unit in Watts a couple of years. Before that, military for 20. I did active duty Marine Corps and deployed in 2004 to Iraq as a heavy machine gunner. Left the Marine Corps, went into the Army Reserve National Guard, where I retired July 4th, 2020 as a first sergeant in the Military Police Corps. And I did a deployment in 08-09 again to Iraq, doing military police work, training military police teams, working at the Military Police Academy. And then in 09, I ran a personal security detail for the old man who was in charge of all MPs in MND North Iraq. I'm an amateur eschatologist and a little bit of a prepper.
Yeah.
And I think that sums it all up, sir.
I think that's really odd when you start talking about preppers, right? Because they had that one show.
Yeah,
one show. And they really would do their best to get the craziest person out farthest away from the city.
Right.
And a lot of cases when you talk about prepping, here in the Golden State, we have earthquakes, right? Earthquakes are very real to us.
We did have the one in 2018. I actually deployed to that one. That crazy earthquake that happened just about an hour and a half past Lancaster.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, buildings collapsed. It was about a year after the major fires in Santa Rosa and Ventura County, so we were kind of getting slammed with natural disasters all the way from northern LA all the way out to Santa Rosa, which is northern Central California, right?
So when you were out there and you would go into these cities where you had these major earthquakes that had happened, what seemed to be the temperature of of the people that were there, the civilians, what I'm saying, not law enforcement, not the first responders, but how would you say, what was your observance of the civilians?
To be honest, they didn't respond very well, a lot of them, because they were underprepared for situations like natural disasters. And so what I saw, like in Santa Rosa during that big fire in 2017, that place went so quick and nobody was prepared. Nobody had any kind of caches for food or water. They were relying solely on FEMA, the National Guard, and private entities to provide food, water, and shelter.
That's really unfortunate because just a little bit ago you were talking about contingencies, right? So for a civilian, like what does contingencies look like in your opinion?
What's my primary source of food and water?
Yes.
It's all the stuff that you're going to find in my main fridge and freezer here in the house, right? Mm-hmm. And then my secondary is my backup freezer. It's a stand-up freezer. It's 28 cubic, inches, and it's a lot of frozen foods. Frozen fruits, frozen vegetables that can be thawed out and eaten over time. My secondary is my outdoor kitchen. Now for tertiary food, I've got food stashed in the garage that could supply my entire family, me and my 3 sons, for upwards of 120 days. And then I have a tertiary cooking device also, which is, I don't know if you saw, it looks like a fire pit, but there's actually a grill on it and it's a stove.
Yes.
Right? Now, my contingency that supplements the first 3 if they go out is my RV. And I've got, 5 20-pound propane tanks. But then the contingencies, if I had to leave out of this place, where can I go to get to food, water, and also it's a dwelling, right? Because it's an RV. So I'd be able to hook that up, take it out somewhere, go live off of BLM, Bureau of Land Management, or state property somewhere, and be able to supply decent living quality conditions for my sons and I.
So that's a in-depth planning sequence that you've ran through your head. How would we approach help being 45 minutes away? Till Kingdom Come is mostly focused on those civilians living in cities. So do you believe by yourself that you could be able to traverse through a city in chaos by yourself?
So, to be honest with you, there's a reason why I'm out here on the outskirts in a rural neighborhood, right? I mean, is this a city? Yes, it's a city, but this is a very rural city. It's not high density. So part of my planning was to not be near the actual highly dense city where getting out by freeway or by service roads is going to be so congested you can't get out. So for the civilian who's in that condition and not being part of a network or a team, it's going to be very challenging. You have to be a part of a team. You have to be part of a network.
Not everybody in the military is combat arms.
Right. Service support.
A service support, right? You bring the same model of that the military has set up for a civilian network, where not everybody needs to be the soldier, or not everybody needs to be the cook, or not everybody needs to be the mechanic, but you should have those positions filled.
So these would be components, right? To any, like you said, family nucleus group. Any, I don't like to use the word commune, but it's a commune, right? This family nucleus group you're speaking of right now is a commune, and in order for a commune to be functioning properly, you have to have different components. You have to have a leadership component, right? Which you can make up of one individual, or you can do like a board of 3 people who kind of have to come together to make decisions. But on top of that, you have to have your warriors, right? You have to, because you have to be able to defend your commune. You do have to have your cooks, but you also have to have your supply guys or your logistics people. Could you imagine if 2 big guys like us go to whoever is in charge of logistics and supplies, and we're like, no, we want double rations. Yeah. Oh, they got to be able to say, I'm sorry, boss, we just can't do that right now.
Right.
We have to ration out the food. So you got to have somebody who's responsible and assertive enough to handle that position. But what are we doing? Are we holding down somewhere and digging in, and now we've got to worry about busting out the seed packs and start growing our own food because we're going to be there for a while? If, God willing, the conditions and the environment account for that, then who's going to be doing that? Who's going to be in charge of the fruits and the vegetables that are growing? You do have to have key positions, and those components have to be filled by people who are comfortable in those positions. So it's always best to fill those positions with people who've already been in them.
So when the opportunity presents itself, it's best to have people who are already familiar with these different types of jobs, who have grown these skills.
Right.
They may even have a natural proclivity to excelling in those areas, right? So you want to make sure that as you're accumulating your group together, you're filling key positions.
I had to go hand pick a small team of people to roll out on birds and drop into LA right behind 19 Group, which is the National Guard Special Forces, if something got to that level where we had to do that. My point is, though, who do you think I went and sought after? Those that already knew or had a good grasp on CQB and door entry and building clearing and good, solid, foundational tactics and firearms, right? So I went for tacticians. I didn't go after administrations and go, hey, dude, you process our paychecks.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and jump in the truck?
Yeah, I've seen you watching those YouTube videos on your lunch breaks. Why don't you come on in?
My
here
favorite.
Bruh.
But what I also did, and I was very successful in the Marine Corps in 29 Palms with this, is my strong guys in that field, that component, once we were established, right, and we had everything running smooth, I would take those guys and go, now guess what? I want to show you what I'm looking for, and I want you to take that and go cross-train somebody that's not familiar with tactics at all. Go grab the mechanic from the motor pool. Go grab the cook that's out there cooking our eggs and our gravy or our veal for lunch, right? Grab those guys and start showing them slowly what you can do, and then have them show you what they do. And you start cross-training. But you can't prematurely cross-train, because then if you do that, it's all FUBAR, right?
Bruh.
I'm a very big proponent and pusher of cross-training once everything's established. So yeah, we got to fill those key components, and we want to do it with people who know it best, who are familiar with it, where it's just like breathing to them.
Yes.
Right? And that's crucial. Because if I took you and I said, hey, the two of us are going to go fix an engine, I mean, yeah, we have some basic knowledge, but it's not something we do every day.
It doesn't come second nature.
And now we're going to break down halfway to Salton Sea, where we're going to camp out and bivouac for like 2 weeks until everything blows over. It's not a good idea.
So perfect segue is you have a civilian, and he comes to you, and he says, Robb, I'm getting my house together, right? I got myself some water. I got myself a dog. My wife is on board. That's very important. Where do I start? As far as, should I start looking at firearms? Should I start looking for training for my dog? Should I start looking for what? How would you advise that man?
All right, so honestly, I'm going to take it back to God. First and foremost, that man has to be in his Bible. Because that book tells us everything we need to know about our role in any situation. That man needs to be in his Bible. He needs to be reading. He needs to be talking to God, talking with God. He needs to be listening with his ears open for that discernment from the Spirit, right? To tell him what he needs to be doing.
Absolutely.
Once he's prayed, then your volume to God isn't going to be turned down. He's not going to squelch you. He's going to answer you. He's going to give you that discernment. And every man needs to pray himself to God to find out what God wants from that man. Now, the tools that I recommend, though, besides having a good Bible, right, and a good devotional or daily reader, is to have, at a minimum, you want to have at least 30 days, but I recommend 90, of water and food for every member of your family. And that includes your dog. Trained or untrained, your dog needs to have just as much food. You have to have a firearm for protection. And I always recommend a shotgun first, right? Get yourself a 12-gauge shotgun and get slugs, get double lock buck, get some bird shot if you need. That's you shoot somebody with bird shot, they usually run away. If you have the ability to get multiple guns, you get yourself a shotgun, a 12-gauge, and you get yourself a pistol. Whatever caliber you're comfortable with, 9mm, 40, 45, 10mm. Don't get off-brand custom rounds, though, because now you got to go find those things when everything falls apart.
I like the conversation of that because the way I'm built is I want reliability.
Right.
right?
Reliability should be built in.
Reliability should be built in.
Yep.
And just like the gospel, just like the Bible, it stood for thousands of years. Okay, I want a round that has stood for decades.
What people don't realize is Winchester White Box, which a lot of law enforcement uses for practice ammo on the range or qualifying. I don't think people realize if you go buy a Winchester 9mm or a Winchester White Box Q31-31-556, that's mil spec. It's the same round we're shooting in our military guns. So if the Winchester White Box repackaged for the military and painted green or whatever is good enough for the United States Marine Corps and the United States Army to go and fight wars with, it's definitely good enough for you to be defensive and offensive with.
Yeah.
So that round, I'm going to tell you right now, I've got thousands of White Box. Thousands. But you can't go wrong with Winchester. You can't go wrong with Ruger round. You can't go wrong with Spear. You know, those are just great rounds. And so unless you're shooting rabbits and stuff, or you have training guns like I do for my kids where they're shooting 22s because they used to be cheap and now they're super expensive.
Yeah.
You know, that's fine. But you're not going to go get like 25 caliber and 32 caliber and, 380s. Like, what's that going to do for you? Now, if it's all you can get your hands on, I get it. But that's not a round that is a dominating superior force against other guns with bigger rounds. It's just not. So why waste your time or your money? You talk about reliability built in, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about reliability. What kind of guns are you looking for? What brand names are you looking at? I'm not big on pushing brand names, but I go with what I know. And I mean, I carried Colt for 20 years. And the Marine Corps competition pistol team, right, the shooting team, we did Colt 45s, 1911s, right? I know Colt has stood the test of time. So having a Colt rifle or a Colt 1911, there's nothing wrong with that. Smith & Wesson is amazing too. The department, a lot of the local departments, the CHP, the California Highway Patrol, they've used, Smith & Wessons forever. The 4006, 4506 at LAPD. Now they're at the Smith & Wesson M&P. The military switched to Smith & Wesson M&P for a while too before they went over to what they're doing now. But Smith & Wesson is a great company also. Ruger is a good company. Glock is extremely reliable.
Extremely reliable.
USA now.
I mean, you might still pick up some Austria, but let's be honest, they've buried Glocks in the mud for months, pulled them out, loaded them up, and fired them, and they fired fine. So I'm a big proponent of Glock. It's not my favorite gun. I'm a Staccato P STI kind of guy. I have a beautiful STI, but now they're like $2,500. When my wife bought me that one for our 10-year wedding anniversary, it was like $1,500, right? So don't go get the sexy gun because it's what the cool guys carry. How about this? How about you go spend $500 on a Glock, spend another $500 or $1,000 on ammo, and if you get really good with PMO, pistol mounted optics, you go spend $500 on a good optic, and then go spend the rest of that money that you have left over, that $500, $600, $750, and go get on some training. Go pay for somebody to train you how to properly deploy that weapon system, when to and when not to shoot, and then get rounds on target, right? So people spend way too much money on the sexy cool stuff, right? But they don't spend a lot of time or money or effort in actually training. And training is very important. So when you ask me like, well, what should we be doing? We're civilians. Get good quality, cheaper, like cost-wise, cheap, not cheaper like manufactured, right?
Yeah.
Good quality, inexpensive tools of your trade, and then go spend money on training, or get with people like us who can train you, right? I was a PMI for a long time. I taught tactics. I was an instructor at the MP reclass school at San Luis Obispo for years. So there's people like me out there who can train you. They might not even charge. Like, I don't charge civilians for training. It's just something about me, right? I think that's one of those things that God's put on my heart. Like, if civilians that wholeheartedly and truthfully want to learn a little bit of tactics for the purpose of defending their family or being offensive if need be, we'll talk about Constitution later. But my first inclination is if they pass a couple questions, right? Like, there's a little test, I ask them questions. And if they pass the questions or my questionnaire and I discern that they want to learn stuff for the right reasons, then I'll run them through drills and I'll train them and I'll teach them and I won't charge them a single penny.
Like a vetting process.
Yes, you have to vet people.
A vetting process is very, very important.
You have to.
You're going to be allowing people to come into your inner circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may be spending the most vulnerable time with some of these people.
Yes.
You could be potentially. Earthquake happens, fires happen, that devastating fire in Hawaii, or like how we had those crazy fires here in the Golden State a few years ago. You're going to be spending that time with those people, right? And so the vetting process needs to be intense, needs to be intentional, needs to be thought out, it needs to be deliberate,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what should somebody focus on first, right? So they're starting to pick up some momentum. All right, I have my minimum. But what should I focus on? Hand to hand? Should I focus on weapons training? Firearm? Knife? Should I focus on situational awareness?
I'll tell you what, put the darn phone away. Right? You wanna be a soft target? You wanna become a victim on a police report? Do what you see all over the place, right? People are always in their phone when they're walking across the street, walking in. I've seen people walk up to the ATM machine on their phone while they're getting money. They're like on their phone. If I was a bad guy,
That's what I would look for.
That's a soft target. You know what I mean?
That's what I would look for.
That's a soft target. You got to be a hard target, right? So you gotta keep your head on the swivel. You got to keep your eyes level. And so when we were going through Iraq, all my deployments, right? It was always doors, windows, rooftops. Now, rooftops might be a little exaggerated in a normal day-to-day walking down the street type of environment. Mm-hmm. But if the defecation has hit the oscillation and we're at a point where everything's falling apart and people are truly carrying guns to defend their loved ones because they don't want to be looted for their goods, yeah, it's doors, it's windows, it's rooftops. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to get caught off guard. And so people walk around, soft targets all the time, head in their phone, not looking at people. It's not a gross and disgusting habit to size people up. I mean, I don't look at you when I walk by and be like sizing you up like I got a problem. But you think I'm not looking for bulges in the waistband? You think I'm not looking for potential threats?
Yes, which that's I think that comes from training, right? So the military, definitely the police force, but I think that goes back all the way to the playground.
It does.
Right?
Yeah, it does.
You always go on the playground and believe it or not, right? I'm the smallest of a bunch of boys, and so always
Which is crazy. I bet your mom and she's so small. I don't know where it came from.
So yes, I'm always looking. You're always sizing up
Right.
the young man or the boy, the individual that comes around you, because you don't want to be taken advantage of. For me, I didn't want to be held down and tickled or noogied, or my brothers used to throw me into the pool from the roof, and so you grow up doing these things.
Right. So situational awareness is important, and you establish that by making eye contact, by not walking with your head down, by squaring off your shoulders and walking like a man with a purpose and intention, who knows what he's doing and where he's going and why he's going there.
What can you say to the man that he goes to church, he comes home, provides for his family, he's a good man, kids love him, he's just caught in the rat race?
So we're talking about the isolated, secluded lone wolf, right? There's the guy who's
the lone wolf.
He's not making partnerships with a community. He's not, like you said, in the fold. So for that man, we say to him, and he's in the Word, right? I mean, he's reading the Word.
Yeah.
Everything's tribes, right? In the whole Bible, everything's tribes. We're all clan-oriented, right? Everybody's part of a tribe or a clan or a pack. What plans do you have for your family when the next earthquake hits, the fire hits? My point is, you cannot fend for yourself without a group of people or community who are like-minded with the same goal. And what's that goal? Ultimately, it's survivability. You want to be a part of a group who's going to protect the children and then the women and then the other men in the group. So that man, I would tell him, what's your goal? What's your plan? If everything fell apart and you're on ultimate survivability mode, what are you going to do if you don't have a community? Because lone wolves aren't making it. You and just your family, who's going to protect? Who's going to provide the 360 security for the woman and children in your family when it's just you? There's just no man who's single-handedly by himself been able to thrive or survive in conditions that were designed to destroy communities, men, families. What we're seeing right now in America, the destruction of the patriarch. It's just not something that we were designed to do by ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Everything that I do is done with God in mind.
Yes.
Right. Where so on a list of 1 to 10, God is the paper.
Exactly.
Right. That I'm writing.
So
that I'm writing my list on. We were intended to be walking in tandem with each other.
Right.
For God's glory, but we're intended to be walking together in
Right.
doing that. Christ doesn't say, come get saved and then forget about everyone else. He actually tells us to go back into the world.
Right.
Right. And so
we're all priests or pastors, right? We're all to spread the word of God. But I'll tell you one even further. For 3.5 years, the most intense ministry took place. For 3.5 years.
Mm.
Jesus himself had his ministry for 3.5 years before he was crucified at Calvary on Golgotha Hill, right?
Yeah.
He didn't do it alone.
Do you think Jesus would have used 6.5 Creedmoor?
Bruh.
Obviously we don't have the ability that God incarnate had, right? I can't make manna from thin air. So I have to be prepared. So I have to be able to have that fish already on hand. So buy cans of tuna.
Yeah.
And like I told you, my contingency is only like maybe a month's worth of food for me and the boys. Mm-hmm. And then we're fighting, thieves and robbers to take from them or something. But you're right. When the big surplus of supplies are in need and at hand, that's when you're dug into your own place. Even level from Warrior Poet Society says, I'm gonna dig in before I bug out. So yeah, I have a primary, a secondary, and even a tertiary within and around my property. But when it's time to leave, it's 3 days of supply goes with us, and then we get to our 1 month supply in our contingency. So you're right, absolutely. You're not taking 6 months of stuff with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what Robb is talking about, he's talking about a pace, right? So sometimes people don't understand military lingo. Pace is a good way to remember what he was saying, which is primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. All right. And then in every aspect that you're working, do your best to plan that out. I also do want to point to, we were saying just a little bit ago about how to be aware. When our men come back home, they've been at a situational awareness that's so high that when they come home, it's difficult to turn right off. Yep. And that's one of the factors in PTSD. And so what I'm not saying to civilians is to every single place you go, always be looking for a threat, because not only will you not enjoy life, abundantly and life beautifully with your family, but you also could potentially turn yourself into a madman. Right?
Hypervigilance. So I guess what you're saying, right, and because of what I was talking about earlier about always, make eye contact and stuff, I wasn't saying always be prepared for the threat, right? But it's not about always looking for the threat. It's about recognizing the threat.
Yes.
So I should have probably talked about that a little bit earlier and kind of broken it down like we used to say in the military, Barney style. So you're not obviously always looking for the threat, right? That's hypervigilance. You don't want to be that. You're right. It does not make for a fun life. But you are always prepared for a threat, and so by doing that, you know when to recognize a threat.
Well, Mr. Garmong, I want to express my thanks for you accepting me into your home, your beautiful home, for allowing us to have you speaking to our listeners, and giving us a little bit of insight into urban defense. And so again, I want to say thank you very much.
Appreciate you.